BumbleKast. I'm your host, Ian Flynn, the Bumble King, and joining me as always is that freshly remastered, newly released co-host with the mo-host, Kyle JCRB Krause.
I'm here. I'm new. I'm fresh. I have shiny new graphics. I come in at 8K now, 120 frames per second. Not simultaneously, because that's impossible even for the most advanced computer hardware, so don't get your hopes up too high that 8K 120 FPS actually means it's going to be 8K and 120 FPS at the same time for a $500 console. Anyway, what's going on, Ian?
Just want to recommend that if anyone has already experienced Kyle, it is the same Kyle experience. It's just slightly updated, and we're charging you full price again.
Oh, we're charging for this? Okay. Cool. I didn't know that.
So now that we've properly gouged the people, how are you, sir?
I'm doing okay. I'm in a sassy mood today, apparently.
Apparently, Sassy Kyle is on the show.
Apparently, that's the remastered version. I have that modern sass. They don't have the old versions don't have as much sass and salt. Now they're more salty and sassy these days. If you look at any,
it's like a nice ham cured over time, more salt.
Exactly. If you look at any remaster nowadays, now it's it's so I forget the word, like a dark remaster. Everybody's so dark, like the DC universe. It's so dark. Yeah. It's funny because I've always associated like the DC universe with being like the light and fun universe compared to the Marvel universe, but now apparently that is completely swapped around. It's very weird.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
Sure, we'll go with that. So how are you doing, Ian?
I'm doing all right. I'm actually rather tickled by a tiny news blurb I read just before we started recording. Apparently, one of EA's vice presidents doesn't like the term loot boxes.
I did see that.
He prefers the term surprise mechanics.
Yes. Oh,
and I don't know, that level of double speak is just charming for some reason. Man. That's probably the wrong reaction to have.
That kind of is, because that's horrible. That's horrifying.
It's almost like, you're lecturing a 3-year-old for doing something wrong, and they find what they think is this perfect caveat, this little nuance to get out of trouble, and you want to punish them, but darn it, that was so cute, you can't help but want to pinch your little cheeks and say, ha ha, surprise mechanics, oh, you're just a scamp.
Surprise mechanics. That's horrifying. That's terrible. Oh, man. Loot boxes are a scourge. Anyway. We are talking about modern games today, surprisingly. Coincidentally, not surprisingly. I don't know why I said surprisingly. We're talking about games all the time. It's what we do on this show. That's not surprising at the least.
Yeah, but this time around our topic comes from one of our patrons, so a big thank you to Sen Fritz for giving us the topic of the day, which is specifically the pros and cons of video game remakes and remasters.
Yes. What are your overall thoughts on remakes and remasters, Ian? How do you feel about them?
They're kind of a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, I do enjoy when a solid game takes advantage of advances in the hardware and the technology that's available to it. Sometimes the games were limited by what they could do, and even if it's just a fresh coat of paint, it's a nice way to re-experience something that was good. At the same time, if you don't do it right or you do it very, very wrong, it kind of sullies the memory of the original game itself. And I don't think there's one tried and true perfect way to do it. It really varies on game to game and what you're trying to do with that remaster or remake. And we'll get into individual examples of the good and bad. But what about you? But do you have a general idea about it?
I'm generally positive on remakes for the most part. I don't usually have a problem with even if it's like a drastic departure from the original. That's fine, because if I want to play the original, it's not like the original no longer exists, in 99% of cases at least. Sometimes digital-only games get the remake treatment, and then it's like, well, can't play the original anymore. So, but that's very rare. I actually, like, I don't know, I've been enjoying sort of remasters of games since, I'm trying to think, like Super Mario All-Stars for the Super Nintendo, and I haven't had a problem with them. I've liked Super Mario All-Stars is kind of interesting. They do change a lot of the art, and they make it there's certain things that they do, that certain choices that they made in Super Mario All-Stars, for example, that are maybe a little less unique, make it a little less unique or interesting than the originals. Particularly, I'm thinking of like Super Mario Brothers 2, changing the art style a bit to make some weird choices. I've seen some complaints of people like, oh, Lego blocks. Why are there Lego blocks in a Mario game? Because some of the boss rooms in Super Mario Brothers 2 specifically have this sort of Lego block design. Mm-hmm. And I can understand that, but also it's kind of a cool reference because Nintendo actually made a Lego ripoff called N&B blocks. And I believe it seems like they would be a reference to that. So it's kind of a cool reference to Nintendo itself by that same token. So I'm kind of split on it. I don't mind them for the most part. There's really no problem with them for me. Yeah.
I think it kind of boils down to what they do with it.
Right.
Like, I think one of the best examples would be Wonder Boy: The Dragon's Curse, which came out last year, year before.
Uh-huh.
And that is spectacular because it is pretty much Wonder Boy, 1-to-1. Well, it is 1-to-1 because you can readily flip between the original graphic style and the updated style. You can go back to the classic music. You can stick with the remastered music. The game itself, the core, is still there.
Right.
And it's too hard for me, and I hate that. But that's not the point. The point is the original experience is given to you in a nicer form, and it gives you the option to look at how it used to be so you can appreciate how far it's come. To me, that is like the perfect remake of a game. It gives you something new while staying true to what the original was. I think this topic was prompted because of the remake of Link's Awakening that we'll be getting soon.
Yeah, and Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah, there's that too.
Yeah.
But Link's Awakening, never mind that the new art direction with it is absolutely gorgeous. Oh my God, Kyle.
Yeah.
It looks like you're playing a Ray Harryhausen miniature display, and I love it.
It is beautiful.
But in addition to all that, the fact that we're getting the color dungeon from the Game Boy Advanced remake as well, plus the custom dungeon designer, and they've done small quality of life upgrades, like you don't have to switch out your inventory for every single little item. Some of the passive stuff remains active, so you don't go back and forth in the menu all the time. To me, that just looks perfect, top to bottom. Like, they take the original concept, they bring it over, and they make minor tweaks that, you know, appeal to where games have come to today without betraying what the core mechanic of the game is.
Yeah. I love good quality of life upgrades. Those are kind of my main bread and butter, more than anything for remakes. More than updated graphics, more than anything, more than gameplay. Just little things that make things so slightly, that little tweak that makes things just a little bit better, like the fast sale in Link's Awakening HD. Or not Link's Awakening HD. Wind Waker HD, there we go. Yeah, just things like that just make those things, those little improvements, just those little tweaks that help make the game, improve the game overall. And probably should have been there from the beginning, but whatever.
Another one I remember liking was the original Halo remaster. Because that one, too, you could flop between the two graphic fidelities. The original, super blocky, oh my God, I don't remember it looking like this style. And the pretty version.
Of course.
And then you had I believe it was that game, they added in the hidden codecs or computer terminals that fed you backstory with the AIs and kind of expanding the universe. And on principle, I like that because, when they first put Halo out, they didn't realize it was going to become this massive, sprawling IP. So it gives them a chance to go back and kind of rework the beginning a little bit. Now, whether or not you liked those additions, that's not what we're debating at the moment. But the fact that it was kind of optional, since you had to go seek them out, so it wasn't obtrusive to the original gameplay and story progression, I think is a nice way of handling all that.
Yeah. There's also like even remakes that are not necessarily like they don't update the graphic style necessarily, but they add in new things. Like I'm specifically thinking of the Christian Whitehead's Sonic remakes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They don't change the art style at all, but they upscale the resolution and widen the viewing area. And just those two changes alone, I would say, make those the definitive versions of the game. Never mind all the quality of life improvements and the bonuses and selectable playable characters, adding in Tails and Knuckles and all that good stuff. It's just those things that adding in Spin Dash and, well, I was going to say Drop Dash, but Drop Dash actually didn't get added. Drop Dash got added in the Sega Ages Sonic 1 for Switch, which, if it had the same resolution and graphic upgrade that the Christian Whitehead version of Sonic 1 had, would make it the definitive version. But so now there's kind of like two versions of it again that are worth playing. But either way, I definitely appreciate those kinds of changes more than anything else. Just good quality of life upgrades and adding in special bonuses. Upgrades like I'm thinking like the Crash Bandicoot trilogy. Those are still, the gameplay is still there. The gameplay is all intact. It's all good. It's all still playable, but it just looks nicer. And those are nice too. I like those a lot.
Although with the Crash remake specifically, I remember there were some critiques in that the collision detection on some of the enemies and platforms was not as rigid as in the original.
I think the first game had some control issues.
Mm-hmm.
But I think overall, the whole overall package, and those are things that can be fixed post-launch. So I'm not sure that's a huge deal, but I know it can be difficult. It can also be difficult, especially if you don't have access to like the original source code. Like Square Enix having to recode Kingdom Hearts from the ground up because they lost the original source code. It's like, oh boy, why would you do that? So I've not played it. I've not played any of those remakes though, so I don't know if they hold up well in comparison to the original or not. But I
never played the original Spyro games, and I've not experienced the remakes yet. But from what I've heard, they're faithful and solidly done. But just from the observer standpoint, them going from the, hey, look, a bunch of talking triangles to, wow, this is an actual dragon. Look at how much character and bounce they have as they talk to you is just amazing. And just from the visuals alone, it's like, hey, I missed out before. Maybe I'll pick it up when I have time and money. Oh, wait, that'll be never. But it looks great.
Spyro's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that remake. They're putting like a ton of care, and that's the thing. That's the thing about a lot of these remakes and stuff is you can tell when it's just like kind of a cheap cash in, and when the people who are doing the remakes actually care. So, and when they care, it's definitely comes across. So the Spyro one seems to have done well, or seems to have done that part well. I'd say Crash overall did that pretty well. Wonder Boy, the Wonder Boy remake you mentioned is a very, very good example. Like, you pretty much pulled out the best example right at the start. How dare you? But it's kind of amazing that there's so much love for that game by the development team of the remake that it just shines.
Now, on the other end, because I can't think of too many bad ones off the top of my head.
No, not outright bad.
But the one that sticks with me is the GoldenEye remake. What was it? GoldenEye Reloaded?
GoldenEye Reloaded, yeah.
Where the premise sounds great. It's a modern retelling of the story with Daniel Craig Bond. He was apparently gung-ho for it. He's one of the reasons why the project happened. I wanted to be all over that, but just what they did to the dam level, the very first level, missed the point of the game entirely. Now, I'm not saying everything had to explode when you shot it, as funny as that was, but the whole thing about GoldenEye was you were able to take it at your own pace. You could run and gun it. You could be methodical. You could just shoot rockets everywhere if you really wanted. You could play with the gimmick weapons. You could have, it was almost sandboxy, despite how linear the levels were. But it was still exciting, you know? The game reacted to how you played it. With the remake, it just felt like every other sloggy, cover-based shooter game. It was not fun. It was drab. It was boring.
The remake was built with modern sensibilities in mind, and I think that's where things kind of tend to fall apart with remakes. They tend to, when you change the gameplay that much, and not in a good way, but in a way that's completely antithetical to the original game, that's where things start to fall apart. So, yeah, that's a good example of a remake that I think kind of misses the mark. I'm trying to think of any others that I can't think of any off the top of my head that are just like so outright just awful. Maybe cartridge-based RPGs for CD-based systems because you have load times. maybe that's a bad example, but I don't know. There's some of those where like the PS1 remakes of Final Fantasy games, the PS1 ports of Final Fantasy games, I guess, they were enhanced. But they kind of added in load times, and that breaks up the flow of the game. So it's not a huge issue. It's not like it's completely breaks everything. I got one. Sonic 1 for the Game Boy Advance. Sonic Genesis.
There you go.
Yeah, there's a bad.
The literally unplayable.
Yeah, I'd hesitate to even call that like a remaster or anything. It's just like a chop job port that just is horrible, awful. It completely skewers the game. That's the opposite end of the Christian Whitehead and Sega Ages versions of that game.
Now, I can't remember which incarnation of Tales of Phantasia this was, but it was very sloppily retranslated.
Game Boy Advance.
Where you could tell it was a rush job since they talk about the tragedy of Kangaroo, which is what spell check will automatically flag Ragnarok as.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's the Game Boy Advance version. That was the first release of Tales of Phantasia in the West. And probably the last, if I remember correctly. I don't remember any other releases of it, but yeah, that was bad.
And the re-release of Tales of Symphonia, I believe, used the inferior European translation. So you had dialogue that occasionally devolved into just strange characters or broke the dialogue boxes. And
is that like the PC version? I haven't played that yet. Or is it the PS2 version?
Might have been PS2.
I'm just wondering if the PC version suffers from the same issues. I haven't tried it yet. I own it, but
there we go. It was the PS2 version that also dialed down the frame rate. It was 60 FPS on the GameCube. It was 30 FPS on the re-release.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the actors come back to re-record lines for new moves that were added in the extended Japanese version, but the voices didn't match what was originally there. And the main character had a specific move where, I guess to make the voice match the speed of the attack, they just sped it up.
Okay.
So he goes chipmunky for a few seconds, and we're sitting there playing it going, what? Why? When? Why?
You could speed things up without making them chipmunky. What are they doing?
Slapdash.
It's apparently, slapdash ports and remakes and remasters are the scourge. So,
and it also brings up the question of, do games need these updates, and how would you tackle it? There's been a lot of talk lately of doing a remaster or remake of the original Sonic Adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And my question is, how would you even go about tackling that? Because the modern Sonic gameplay, the boosting, the whole Hedgehog engine thing, is worlds apart from the original adventure games. And partly because the adventure games, it was the first time you had Sonic in 3D for realsies.
Right.
So a lot of it was experimental. But that form of Sonic is so much slower and so much squirrelier, whereas modern boost Sonic, if you want to categorize it that way, is very much built around moments where your precision jumping is in 2D, and then your 3D movement is fashioned in such a way that it's really hard to fail. You actively have to try to go off the beaten path to make things mess up.
Yeah, it's almost on rails. Not quite, but almost.
In its best incarnations, like in Colors and in Generations, you have just enough control that you have fun while you're taken for a ride.
Exactly.
And I don't know, I think if you took that and applied it to the adventure games, number one, it would be over really, really fast. And two, it would feel so different that it wouldn't really feel like adventure anymore.
The levels would have to be rebuilt from the ground up. You could have like certain instances of references to specific parts of the previous games, but you would not be able to do the exact same levels, I don't think. So I could see like maybe Sonic Adventure in the style of the Sonic of like Speed Highway from Sonic Generations.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the only way I could think of to do it, is to make it more in line with modern Sonic sensibilities.
Although it would be nice to have a Eggman model that didn't look like an angry Pez dispenser.
Well, that's no fun. Are you telling me Eggman is not an angry Pez dispenser?
And I wouldn't mind a second pass at localizing the script with a modern voice cast applied.
But there's so much charm in that original voice cast in the original
There is. And I imagine that if you were to relocalize it, you'd need to have at least a nod and a wink to some of the more infamous moments.
Oh, of course. You have to. But, yeah. It's hard, especially because like there's gameplay styles in Sonic Adventure that we haven't seen since Sonic Adventure 2. So you'd have to kind of adapt the engine for Sonic Adventure gameplay styles that it may not be suited for. So like the Knuckles gameplay is, I don't know. I don't know if that would work necessarily. That's another reinvention of the wheel for Sonic games that I don't think we really need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, but we gotta have Big's Big Fishing Adventure. So,
well, yeah, that goes without saying.
I mean, I guess you might be able to pull that off with the Hedgehog engine, but
then again, if they did something like a full remake, and some of the side characters' stories were so brief that they almost felt like they should have been mini games rather than part of the main narrative.
Right.
If they were to expand it so that they had, their own versions of certain stages, maybe not necessarily part of the required story path, but kind of a side thing that you could do, that might be neat.
Yeah, I can see that working.
Like throw Amy Rose onto Emerald Coast, and it's an open beach, so there's nowhere really to hide from Zero, but maybe she can jump across little islands or navigate the bridges, and Zero can't cross the water. So you kind of turn the whole survival horror thing on its head a little bit, or at least from a different direction. I don't know. I kind of like that idea now.
Yeah, the question is, do you make Amy fast or not? Because we can't. They can't seem to decide if Amy has speed or not. They really cannot figure that out, can they?
If you don't count the mobile games, it seems like it's more not.
Except
I
we
mean,
have Sonic Heroes, where she does.
yeah, but that had to fit with the whole.
And she's like speed type in all of her incarnations and spin-offs.
No,
So,
in Dark Chronicles, she was a skill type.
all right, I fine, you freaking Sonic nerd. I didn't even know that. I've been thinking like all the racing games and stuff.
Yeah,
She's more like a speed type. I don't know what she is in Sega Superstars, the tennis game.
Oh shoot!
Yeah.
Now you've gone beyond even my knowledge.
Yeah, I'm completely. I don't even know. But yeah, they can't seem to kind of decide where to put her. It's like, is she speed type? But they just build her for balance of whatever game she's in, I guess.
Her character has been experimented more since Adventure than anybody else's, really.
Absolutely. I say Adventure is kind of where that experimentation started, because before that she was just the damsel for Sonic CD. So luckily we've kind of moved beyond that, so it'd be kind of lame to actually go back to that.
Yeah, unless there was baked into it a kind of forward, flashbacky acknowledgement sort of thing. I mean, by the end of Amy's story and adventure, she's gone from I need Sonic to rescue me all the time to I just beat the crap out of Zero. What?
Yeah,
I can do anything.
True.
So
true.
I don't know. I like that transition for her. I feel like she had the best story next to Gamma's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but her part of the game is just so short, which is kind of a shame.
It is, and on the one hand, I kind of wish she had stuck around with that kind of gameplay mechanic, because that kind of survival horror for kids angle was neat. You don't see a lot of that.
Mm-hmm.
And giving her a lot of platforming and puzzle solving would help kind of define her role in a game setting. And we have gotten completely off track of the main topic.
That's okay. Actually, you bringing up survival horror actually makes me think of an interesting one that actually, because I said earlier that like, keeping the gameplay intact is usually for the best, and that's that would be the ideal situation for the most part for remakes. But Resident Evil 2, the remade version, it completely destroys that notion, because the game is so different from the original, but yet it's like so much freaking cooler. It's so much better. And I say that as someone who has not even had the chance to play the Resident Evil 2 remake yet, but everything I've seen of it has just been like, holy crap, this game. Here's the thing. Me and horror games don't usually get along. I don't usually care for horror games too much, but I have a soft spot for Resident Evil 2. I always have. It was the first Resident Evil game I ever got to play, and there's just something about it that appeals to me. I like it a lot. But the remake of it just takes it beyond so much, but it's so different from the original that it's almost like it's just a retelling of the story, but in a completely different way. And I think there's something to be said for games like that, where you can remakes like that, I should say, where you can take the original story and do a completely new gameplay style with it. So I think maybe a Sonic Adventure remake could work in that respect. Do I trust Sega to be able to do that? This incarnation of Sonic Team, I'm not so sure. But
Sonic Colors was good.
Maybe
Generations was good.
Maybe they could pull it off.
Unleashed had its issues, but it was good. There is hope.
I'm not saying that a game in that style can't work. I'm just thinking of them being able to actually turn Sonic Adventure into that style of game, if that would work. I don't know. It's so hard to say. It's so hard to say. What do you think, Ian? Do you think they could pull it off?
I would see, now that we've been brainstorming a bit on it, and you've got me thinking about more levels as big, where, and I'm not memeing here. I'm being legit. If Big was able to go to everybody's stages, but with that kind of low-key exploration with a fishing aspect to it, that would be purchase price alone for me. Because one of my favorite things to do in Adventure was to ignore the objective, because you weren't really time-based.
Right.
and just explore. And there were a lot of really, really neat things to find as big. The various underwater caverns in Ice Cap, the whole hidden hallway in, I think it was Hot Shelter. It's like stuff that you didn't necessarily have to see. You could finish the first fishing hole and be done with it, but you could just kind of wander around aimlessly, like Big, and doing more of that with today's graphical fidelity. I want this, Kyle. I want this so bad now.
That would be pretty cool. It's kind of like just an exploration mode, and I dig that. I'm down. Yeah, I could do that. Now the question is,
do you redo the flashback cutscenes and have Pachamama open his freaking eyes?
Make Tikal playable.
That'd be kind of neat. I mean, they had Metal Sonic is unlockable, so yeah.
I just want Tikal to come back. She got like the short end of the stick. One game and that's it. You're done. Bye.
Well, she was able to do her one thing right, you know.
True. I like Tikal. She just didn't get enough.
Everyone likes Tikal.
She just didn't get enough a chance to shine. Yeah, I know. Everybody kind of does. She's like one of the better voice actors from the game too. So yeah, her voice holds up okay. Everyone else's is a little rough. It's a little rough. I'm looking back on like Sonic's voice from Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, and I'm like, I liked your voice at the time, Ryan Drummond, but nowadays I feel like we've kind of graduated.
Look out, you're gonna crash. Ah!
Yeah. Or Tails' voice. Tails went through so many different voices too in the early 3D era because they could not decide if they wanted him to sound like a kid or be a kid. Eventually they settled on sound like a kid. So, which is a good thing because if they wanted him to be a kid, then eventually the voice actor would grow up and, well, bye-bye kid voice.
All right. I think the consensus here is remakes and remasters are not inherently a good or bad thing. It all depends on what you do with them and what game it's being done to.
Right. What are your thoughts since we mentioned it earlier and it's about E3 time. They just kind of wrapped it up and we've had some reveals and stuff. What do you think about like the Final Fantasy VII remake?
See, I never played Final Fantasy VII because I didn't have a PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not as beholden to it as so many others. I do recognize it as one of the tent poles of the pastime. It's one of the games. Sure. And there's a reason for that, I'm sure. And I don't know. It looks pretty.
It definitely looks pretty, but it plays like a modern Final Fantasy game, which worries me.
And that I'm not so sure about because I understand the old turn-based system is so passé now that, if you make all these other steps forward, why linger on that old mechanic? But at the same time, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, but since then we've had games like Bravely Default, Octopath Traveler. The Dragon Quest series has stuck with that sort of gameplay style for this whole time. And those games have been extremely successful. And people want that style of gameplay, clearly. I think probably more so than modern Final Fantasy style gameplay, it seems like.
But at the same time, with the visual direction, I feel like they're trying to appeal to the crowd that basically want to play Advent Children. Not just watch, play Advent Children.
I think
I'm right there with them.
Oh, sure. I think they just want that graphical fidelity. I think they just want to see what was in their minds at the time that game came out, which I can't blame them for. I quite enjoy that, actually. I like being able to actually see what might have been in my head, but not actually on screen at the time.
Right.
So,
and I think
it's hard to capture.
You can argue that having it being turn-based still limits that spectacle, whereas if you are controlling the timing and the delivery of the blows, you get that degree of, oh, this is how I always envisioned it. But if they don't make that right, if that doesn't play well, if it isn't fun, then you're cutting yourself. I don't know. It's really hard to say at this point. I guess we'll just have to wait till it comes out.
Yeah. I played the original Final Fantasy VII. I wouldn't say I have the attachment to it that a lot of other people do. So I'm interested to see what sort of game it ends up being, how much of it captures the original spirit of the game and how much of it sort of follows the modern sensibilities of Final Fantasy. It's going to be interesting. Whether it'll be successful or not, well, it'll be a monetary success, which Square Enix really needs right now. That's the whole reason they're even doing this remake. But whether it will actually be successful in terms of a good remake remains to be seen. So,
if nothing else, I want to see what the remastered Knights of the Round looks like.
Oh yeah, and Omnislash.
Omnislash,
and all of the summons. Knights of the Round. Like, I'm just wondering if like Meteor's going to be playing out for 5 minutes like it did originally, and yeah, that could be interesting. So, yeah, I think I'm just wondering how many people are going to be playing the remake of Final Fantasy VII and sort of not realize some of the be thinking like, oh, this game was just Cloud versus Sephiroth. It was just these cool spiky haired dudes beating each other up with swords. And then they come in and realize there's like so much political intrigue and all of this environmental message stuff. And they're like, this wasn't Final Fantasy VII. Yeah, stuff like that. I'm kind of wondering.
Stupid SJWs ruining my angst mode.
Ruining Final Fantasy VII. It's like, have you played the original game? It's all there, buddy. It's like right in your freaking face. You have to literally walk through a slum village to get to the rich tower of people in the center of the city, or to get to the giant tower of fun that's with the slum village at the base, to get to the giant tower of entertainment, the giant gold saucer. It's like, come on, guys. They literally like put this right in your freaking face. It's not hard. It's not hard. It's an environmental message and the class message and the rich versus poor message of Final Fantasy VII has been there the whole time. Anyway, I think we've sufficiently discussed this topic enough, Ian. Thanks, Sin, for suggesting it for us.
Yep. Let's move on to the Q&A.
All right. So, if you want to ask questions, you can email us, BumbleKast@yahoo.com, on Twitter, @BumbleKast, down in the YouTube comments, or via Patreon comments or messages. First up, we got to get into the Patreon priority Q&A from our lovely patrons who have donated to that tier so they can get their questions answered quickly. And, of course, starting us off, none other than good old ScruffyMatt.
Howdy, Scruffy.
He says, hey, fellas, how you doing today? Not too bad.
Doing all right.
Ian, when you were writing the Worlds Unite crossover, did you ever envision a scenario where there'd be a rivalry between Sonic and Alex Kidd? When it was first announced that Alex Kidd was going to be in Worlds Unite, I was expecting him to be a bit salty that Sonic had stolen the position of SEGA mascot from him.
No, actually. Not that we ever would have had a lot of time, because at that point we were in the mad dash for the big climactic fight. But the theme of Worlds Unite, especially the third act, was heroes coming together against a common foe. And I feel like...
It's literally in the title.
Yeah. I feel like that having Alex be salty or bitter towards Sonic would kind of undercut that theme.
Mm-hmm.
And not that I am an expert on the Alex Kidd lore, but he doesn't strike me as the type of character to be bitter, to hold a grudge. He seems like he might have a bit of a fiery temper, kind of a snap to anger type of thing, but he doesn't strike me as someone who would be a grudge holder.
That was my answer to this question was, but Alex Kidd is too friendly and pure for this world. How could he be so salty that Sonic usurped his position?
Like, he doesn't take any guff. If someone gets in his face, he'll put him down with that big old fist. But
oh yeah,
he doesn't strike me as someone who would mutter, man. And I know I make my references. I know I kind of push the envelope on self-referential humor. I mean, really push that envelope like under the door so you don't have to put a stamp on it anymore. But I feel like calling out that kind of mascot usurpation. How do you conjugate usurp?
Sure, we'll go with that.
Anyway, I feel that that's a little too on the nose for me, at least in the context of that story. Like if you had Sonic and Alex Kidd existing in a story where they knew that they were mascots, that they were brand characters, that's different. But within the context of that story and most of what I write, they're beings in their own world, so they wouldn't really have that outsider's perspective.
I have to say, I think I've said this before, but my favorite part of Worlds Unite was the panel of Sonic and Alex Kidd shaking hands and coming together and being friends. I think that was so sweet. I don't know. It's just
part of it was Tyson's rendition of it. It was just spectacular because everything Tyson touches is gold.
That too, but it made my tiny heart grow 3 sizes that day. To see Alex Kidd and Sonic the Hedgehog together on panel, it made my Sega heart happy. All right, next one comes from Andrew D. If the cosmos aligned and the Sonic the Hedgehog omniverse collapsed into a single multiverse or universe, meaning all the various Sonic series are now one new series, what things such as characters, lore, locations, etc. would you like to see included? What would you like to see excluded? For example, would Sonic's mother be Queen Aleena or Bernadette? Would you like to have had the 2 Robotniks from the original Archie run, or one specifically? Maybe Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog Robotnik? And most importantly, would Sonic's arms be blue?
No! His arms are not blue! For pity's sake!
Would his
Do
arms...
I have to mace a GameStop employee for people to understand this?
Would arms be blue, and would Sonic's eyes be split in the middle?
The only reason I get hung up on the blue arms thing is that, in the early days of the old book, we had so many notes on the freaking blue arms that it kind of became a pet peeve, eye twitchy thing. So when Sonic Boom did it, it was like, oh, for pity's sake! We went for how long? But
that's funny because it's not nearly as egregious in Sonic Boom as it is in the Sonic movie design. It still works in Boom.
Except with Boom, it bugs me because, okay, Shadow and Silver have furry arms.
Yeah.
Sonic traditionally does not, but then in Boom he did. Okay, fine. But then Amy does. So where's the consistency? If Sonic's going to have blue arms, she ought to have pink arms. If they don't, then forget it. I'm not getting hung up on the arms thing. It's stupid. Anyway, what to do with a single re-envisioned Sonic universe? Oh my!
I would say Archie Sonic pre-reboot probably comes the closest to this. Just because it integrates so many of the previous, not only games, but also certain aspects of the previous TV shows. And of course it has its own lore and all that stuff. So, but there's definitely a lot of stuff that it leaves out.
See, I would be more inclined to think it'd be closer to post reboot, since that was the same idea, incorporating all the different cartoon elements and outside media, but with a game base.
I guess that's true. Okay, more game stuff. Yeah, okay.
But it's harder to compare the two because the reboot universe kind of got cut off at the knees before it could really match up against the pre-reboot stuff.
Right.
The Volume 1 was just so much larger than Volume 2, it's hard to compare them on equal footing.
Yeah.
And how we did that is a whole other topic, but all right, so a full-on new universe. I think it would definitely start with, are we taking this into the context of, well, I guess if it's the whole omniverse, then the game universe is folded into this too. So I've just been made brand manager of a whole rebooted Sonic IP. Dear Lord.
And I'm assuming this means classic and everything gets all combined.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about the classic aspect.
Would the two worlds aspect even still exist, or is this all combining? Even like taking the two worlds and combining that? Yeah, this is one heck of a thought exercise, Andrew.
I guess, yeah, the two worlds thing would be kind of out the window. I don't see the point to it. And especially if we're building from the ground up here, there's no concerns about conflicting continuity or things not making sense because we're starting from scratch, right?
Sure.
Everything's from the ground up. So
we'll go with that.
Yeah, I'd stick it to one world. I don't know if Blaze's world necessarily would need to be in a different dimension. The fact that she's from another world is kind of intrinsic to her. Maybe put it in the same solar system.
Sure.
Just to make things different. We didn't know there was life on another world, and there you go, maybe.
Maybe you could play with her as like sort of a Superman / Supergirl analog or something.
Fold in Planet Donpa into that.
With more fire.
Yeah. King Dodonpa doesn't really need to be his own planet king, but whatever. But we're looking too broad. Let's look specifically at what Andrew was asking about here, like Sonic's family. What I would like to do, really and truly, is go back to the original manga with Paulie and shoot, what was the mother's name?
You're barking up the wrong tree here because I'd never read.
I think it was something close to Bernadette, honestly. I thought it was like Bernie or something. Very close, which is weird.
Yeah.
But have them be like an adventuring set of parents, and Sonic took out on his own. You know, they're adventurers. They raised an adventurer, and he's off adventuring. So you have that freedom of movement, and you don't have the parents kind of bogging him down, which is what Volume 1 really suffered from a lot of.
Yeah.
Shoot, there's just so much to cover on that.
Like, would we go with sort of like the Sonic the comic, the UK comic origin for Sonic, or
no? See, I never really liked.
Would we leave the origin up to interpretation, or is kind of a whatever? Who cares? Who cares what his origin is? He's Sonic.
Yeah, I never liked the brown hedgehog and the rock device. I felt like that was overcomplicating things. Sonic is just a fast dude. In a world of fantastic animal creatures, he is the most fantastic. Juxtapose that with, normal everyday humans, and sure, he seems bizarre, but in terms of the Mobian species, and I would like to bring back Mobian, thank you very much.
That would make things a lot easier.
He's just an exceptional individual, and because he is able to do such fantastic feats, he is, surrounded by others who are equally phenomenal, like the mad genius who can build armies overnight, or the boulder shattering guardian, or the kid who can fly with his butt, that kind of stuff.
Or the cat lady who wields fire.
Exactly. Eggman, I think, needs to just be our present incarnation of Eggman. I think out of all the Eggmen that have been or will be, that is the best. He's charismatic. He's threatening. You can have fun with him. You can cheer for him while also going boo at the same time. It's just, I like this Eggman a whole lot. I have a ton of fun with this incarnation.
It's so tough, though, because I still love Sad AM Robotnik, too.
He definitely had his presence. That's the voice more than anything.
Right. Yeah, that's true. The voice definitely lends a lot to it, because Sonic Underground's Robotnik, same design, very different character, and definitely not nearly as threatening.
Right. In terms of, I hate to say exclude anything, because that's going to hurt somebody's feelings, but you can't include everything, because then it just gets bloated. I
think over time you could sort of build things up to where you could reference certain aspects that maybe people like, or which you already do as it is, so it's not really any different for you. You try to at least make little nods here and there to everyone's preferences. So, and I think that's what a lot of people appreciate. I know I appreciate it.
If this is probably going to rile some people, but what would be a potential consolidation? And take this with a grain of salt. But in Underground, when we see the flashback of Robotnik taking over and chasing Aleena out of Mobotropolis, there's clearly a statue of King Acorn being toppled. And if we're going with Sonic being the son of Paulie and what was her name? Babs, dadgummit. Adventurers, then it doesn't make sense that Aleena would be his mother, but you need the royal triplets is kind of inherent to it. So let's merge it all together. King Acorn was married to Queen Aleena, and the royal triplets are Sonia, Manic, and Sally. Huh?
Sally?
Yeah, why not?
Okay.
I can hear people screaming right now.
I was gonna say. Are you sure?
I think I've committed the ultimate sacrilege.
I was gonna say, are you sure you meant to say Sally? Because you I don't know, just mentioning that name can be dangerous.
See, I don't know if that would work or not. If that would just complicate it, because how would that dynamic between Manic and Sonia
and Sally
even work? That'd be weird.
That would be weird. Yeah,
that's like peanut butter jelly and fish. Never mind.
It's a fun thought experiment, but yeah, I think you might have gone a little too far on that one.
They can't all be winners. I don't know. We've gone all over the place. Andrew, this is a gigantic question. The short answer is I don't know. I would really have to sit down and work on this for a while to get it under control, because there's just so much to mine from.
All right, Ian, Sin has an answer to who's Sonic's mom's name, Brenda.
Okay.
So there we go. There's your answer to that.
You cut out right as you said it.
Brenda.
Brenda! Thank you! I knew it was something with a B. Brenda. Yes,
Brenda.
I'd like to bring back Paul and Brenda. The names are kind of weird, but I don't know. I like the designs.
Paul and Brenda, those are very, very standard human style names for Sonic characters.
They got into the adventuring life. They really enjoy it. They're having a kid. It's like, what should we name him? Well, my name's Paul. Your name's Brenda. We need something that really inspires this kid. How about Sonic? Yeah, and then he's born fast.
Go figure.
That's the origin of his speed. They instilled their desires upon him.
And apparently he has a sister in that comic too, in the manga.
Yeah, because the kids are Nikki and is it Amy is the sister?
That's weird. let's not do that.
Yeah, no. We're not doing the whole Babs and Buster Bunny not related thing. No, it's
Tanya.
Yeah, we'll not go there.
All right. Okay.
Now, if Amy was the third triplet,
that could actually make a little more sense. But then they're all
might be interesting.
But then they're all hedgehogs. None of them are. None of them are weird.
Yeah.
None of them are
King
weird.
Acorn married in the family. But
none of them are weird chipmunk squirrel hybrids.
You've got the wild and rambunctious Manic. You've got the prim and proper Sonia, and then you've got Amy that's kind of a middle ground, trying to keep the peace between the two of them.
I could see that.
Maybe if you played up the purples on Sonia and accented the pinks on Amy, that might not be bad. I don't know if I like the idea of Amy being royalty, but if they all didn't know it growing up, I don't know.
That kind of gives Amy a little bit more of an origin story, because she doesn't really have one.
No, not really.
She just kind of is there. Which, I mean,
I
it's
don't
fine.
hate
You don't need a character to have an origin story. It's not necessary, Marvel.
But no, I don't hate that, but I don't know if I love it either. Oh well. I'm really, really intrigued by the original manga and the little bits of information that trickle out over the years. Like, what's his name? Is it Rude? Or
I don't know.
There was a bully who was like this lizard guy in a leather jacket named something like Rude or Vicious or Angry or something like that, but with like an Italian last name. And then it turned out he had like a little brother, and then it was recently found that there was like a whole family of them. It was like the original Koopa kids, almost.
Huh. That could have been interesting.
And it's like, this could have been so neat. And the fact that, Sonic was a transformation himself. It was Nikki getting divine power and turning into someone cool and powerful is just weird and neat. And I don't want to go back to that necessarily, but it would be kind of cool to revisit and kind of tinker with that a little bit. Like, part of me almost wonders if the Deadly Six is kind of based off of the old, what were they called? The old began with a V, but that old family, because they're all kind of reptilian-ish, or maybe it just a happy coincidence. I don't know. It's just it's this really obscure bit of Sonic trivia that I really want to play with, but it's completely off limits.
Well, there's also like the original Sega of America story origin for Sonic, I think, where it's like he's a regular hedgehog from Wyoming who literally lives in a hedge or something.
Right.
Yeah, and so that could be interesting to play with too, but it seems like that origin is actually kind of what the movie is going to be based on.
So anyway, Sin says that it's Anton. I think Anton was the name of the little brother. I think the older brother had a very, Englishy verb name. And I have no idea how to look this up. Shoot. Let me think.
Are there two Antons? There's Anton and Antoine. Huh. Interesting.
Okay. So Anton was the older brother. His little brother is Mad. I knew it was something like that.
Anton Veruca?
Veruca. Which I guess it doesn't really sound like Italian after all, but
yeah, it's more like
I wanted to say Veruca, but I didn't think that was right. But yeah, I mean, just that synopsis of Anton, that he's just a troublemaker, would be a great, lesser enemy for the series. He's just a jerk who's causing trouble. And, a lizard fighting Sonic is just cool by itself.
Yeah. Kind of reminds me of, I don't know, Knack.
Yeah. I don't know. See, I want to play with the Veruca family, but
a different one. And it is off limits? No manga stuff allowed? Or you just haven't tried?
I'm assuming so, because everything that I've done up to this point, if it's not grandfathered in, like the Freedom Fighters and some of the cartoon stuff was grandfathered in on the old licensing deal. And even that was sketchy at best. At any point, Sega could say, that's not how we want the license represented. And, at any given point, they could have told us to delete the Freedom Fighters and we wouldn't even have gotten a story to do it. That's the kind of power they had. So I sincerely doubt that they want me referencing a 1990s era manga.
All right. Are we ready to get into the standard Q&A now that we're...
Yeah, before we get into any more trouble. Sin, thank you. That was going to bug me if I didn't get that answer.
Now that this episode has gone quite long. Next question comes from Jan Schupiden. We're into the standard Q&A, by the way. When will have Sonic crossover with IDW Universe with MLP, TMNT, and Gears of War? One of these things is not like the other.
One of these things is not the same, but oh boy, that would be hilarious. The Locusts invade Equestria. Raphael with one of the chainsaws? Yes! This is brilliant! Yan, you get dibs. You get to write this. You inspired it.
All right, wait, I was thinking of these things separately, but combining them all together is even better. Like Sonic coming together with Sonic just in Gears of War. It's like, well, I mean, we had Sonic Forces. You could kind of just make it Sonic Forces a little darker, and you get Gears of War. But now combining them all together, okay, yeah. And then we got to throw Transformers in there too, of course, and G.I. Joe. You got to have them all.
What else do they ride into battle, man?
We got to have Godzilla. Everything IDW owns.
Well, I mean, there's some kind of giant critter in Gears of War, right? Have Godzilla throw down with that.
Of course.
Meanwhile, honk, here comes the semi plowing through everything. Raph jumps out with his chainsaw. Twilight Sparkle comes out shooting magic out of her horn. Sonic whips out with one of the flare bursts, Wispons, blazing everything, and then the truck transforms into Optimus Prime. Bam, bam, bam. The city is leveled. There's no dialogue. It's nothing but action shots. I love it.
It's a G.I. Joe comic, so there has to be no dialogue. Perfect. You've done it again, questioners, listeners out there. You're inadvertently brilliant. Or maybe intentionally brilliant. All right, next question comes from Biostar. How did the decision to set the comic directly after Sonic Forces come about?
That was, I think, my idea. I'll take responsibility for that one, I guess. Because Forces was coming out right around the time the comic was launching. So my thinking was the most experienced media at the time would be the game. Folks coming onto the comic would be coming fresh off of that. So I assumed everyone would have the Forces story kind of in mind as they picked up the comic. Not sure if that quite translated well, but season 1 was well received. We're good.
It's good brand synergy, at least. All right, next question comes from Diamond Death. I don't understand Sega's thought process on preventing old and successful Sonic-related things that really nailed what Sonic was from ever returning to the series, while also trying new things, like the live-action Sonic movie, that miss what Sonic is all about. Why not dabble with what's successful while also trying new things instead of putting all of your eggs into the new things basket?
That's less of a question and more of a statement, and all I can do is kind of helplessly shrug, because something you got to understand is Sega is not one entity. It is not a singular person. Whoever made the decision to greenlight the Sonic movie is not necessarily the same folks that are involved with the games or the licensing of anything else. It's a small but still large company over multiple countries. So when you say, what was Sega thinking, I think kind of implies that there is one single head of everything making this decision when there's not. I can't really speculate because I do not know all the feedback that upper management is getting or who is making those decisions. I'm with you guys. I'm kind of rolling along with the franchise as it does its thing and just trying to enjoy it as it comes along.
All right. And our last question comes from Almiron R. I really like the relationships that happen in the Mario and Sonic series. If the Sonic series made a crossover with Star Fox, what relationships would the characters have?
So I've thought about this a little bit myself. And the two takeaways I have so far is, number one, it doesn't really mesh as neatly as some other things would. In part because I think the Star Fox crew would be greatly disturbed why everyone is naked.
Maybe.
But that aside, I imagine Tails and Slippy would be the best of friends immediately.
Oh, of course.
And geek out over the R-Wing tech start to finish. And Tails would take to it exceptionally well. And then I guess at the climax of the story, he comes in with a completely retrofitted tornado that is all R-Wing styled. Or maybe a callback to that old Space Shooter arcade game from way back in the day.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I don't really have too much on it. But I don't know. I feel like the high-spirited, adventurous attitude of most of the Sonic cast would mesh fairly well with the devil-may-care freelance pilots of Star Fox. But that whole lack of pants thing would have to be addressed, and I think that'd be a sticking point.
I'm kind of wondering, is like, have Sonic, maybe it could be like a multi-pronged assault where you have like a ground team, which would be the Sonic characters, and then the airborne team would be Star Fox. I don't know.
Oh, look at you.
Something like that. Because, I mean, that's like the only way I could see it really working, unless you give some sort of, you give them aircraft. You give the Sonic crew aircraft, which... Oh,
no, dude. Sonic would be able to ride on top of an R-Wing, G-Diffuser or not.
Yeah, true. I don't know. Has it been established that Supersonic can breathe in space? Is this 100% canon?
I think they can breathe in space regardless.
Oh, can they?
Because there's a lot of them running around.
Well, then, fine.
Supered.
Well, then, fine. We can go ahead and do that. Fine, you can all breathe in space. Good. We've answered that question. I was just thinking of like Supersonic flying up with an R-Wing, you know.
Yeah, bopping Andros right in the nose.
Flanking an R-Wing, yeah. I'm just trying to think of like Andros and Eggman. Would they even like get along? I don't know.
Not as well as he did with Wily.
No, yeah, I agree.
Andros has got way too much of an ego to even consider working with anybody else.
That's funny because you think Eggman would have a ginormous ego too, but...
He does, but he's also so jovial about it that as long as he feels like he's the mastermind with an accomplice, it kind of works out. Andros would never broker that.
Right.
Like with Eggman and Wily, they had so much in common that they could get along. They meshed on the same level of ego. But the minute that, once Eggman tossed Light out the airlock and went completely against the grain of what Wily would want, the egos no longer matched and the friendship completely fell apart.
Yeah, once Wily realized that, Eggman really just doesn't care about anybody. Like, everybody's going to die. Everybody is under threat from this guy, not just the robots and the Mobians. It's everybody. It's like, oh, okay, this is going a little too far.
But Andros is such a domineering guy. I can't see him even for a moment trying to play Eggman, because Eggman would not be played.
No.
That, and Andros seems to dabble in biotech, whereas Eggman is strictly mechanical. Yeah, he has little animals in it, but they're more of a battery. They're not part of the machine. Whereas Andros is making these horrible amalgamations, these horrors of nature. So,
yeah.
If anything, they'd be fighting each other, which could be kind of fun in its own way.
Yeah, I can see that. You'd have like a sort of a three-prong thing going on, You have Robotnik on one side, Eggman, whatever you want to call him today, and Andros on the other, and then you have Star Fox and the Sonic crew. Yeah, I could see it working.
And we're resurrecting Andros because none of the other villains really took off.
What other villains?
The Aperoids and the Anglar.
I know I'm joking, but it's obviously.
I fell for it.
Obviously, Ian. All right. Before we get going, though, we've wrapped up the Q&A. But before we get going, let's go ahead and get into some comments from people following up from previous episodes. First one comes from Borvok. Following up on you canceling Sonic Underground, I'm personally still upset that you rushed the development of Sonic 06, created Boom using an engine that didn't work on the Wii U while making it a Wii U exclusive, canceled the Archie books, and then created that awful Sonic design for the upcoming film. Ian,
look,
you're a horrible person. Look at all those things you did. Can you believe this?
What can I say? I hate Sonic, clearly.
All right, cool. Clip that out of the episode.
This has all been in a long, long plan to destroy the hated franchise from within.
All right, clip that out of the episode, people. Have fun with that one. Don't worry about the context. Just clip that part, and you will have your answer to everything.
Oh, they're going to clip out the Sally being the third triplet thing and have a field day with it. You know that.
Whatever. I don't care. You just mentioned Sally, and all of a sudden it's a free-for-all, so whatever. It's fine. It's fine. I don't know. Maybe we should have a moratorium on mentioning Sally on this show. I'm joking. But
anyway.
Maybe we should. Anyway, final comment comes from the real FDA. I bet it's also your fault Sad AM didn't get a third season. You monster!
Not going to lie. When I was a little kid watching Sad AM and, the infamous season 2 cliffhanger happened, I spent a lot of time waiting for that season 3 to start.
So did I.
And it's like, well, they can't just end it there. Clearly, they meant to go further. Why haven't they yet?
Oh, man.
It wasn't until much later, thanks to the internet alone, that it's like,
yeah.
Still do not buy that the red eyes were supposed to be Nagas.
I don't know.
I know that's what Ben Hurst intended, and the overall plans he had for season 3 seemed pretty neat, but you look at that scene, you see the silhouette of what looks like the muzzle and the nose. It's very clearly a rendition of Sonic's face with red eyes. That's Metal Sonic. That's Sad AM styled Metal Sonic right there. You can't tell me any different. Nagas didn't look like that. What do you want? Nah.
Freaking Metal Sonic would have been awesome. Holy crap. Oh, man. Yeah. Jeez.
I mean, you remember that episode where Robotnik baits Sonic into a race through Robotropolis?
Yeah.
And he has that freaking awesome robot cheetah thing.
It's like the first episode I ever saw, and that was freaking awesome. Yeah.
I mean, That thing was freaking amazing, and I'm sitting there going, this looks so cool. I can't wait to see what they do with Metal Sonic in this series.
And then it never happened.
Now, if they were to bring back, any obscure stuff from that show, Freedom Fighters and lore and all that aside, I want to see that Mecha Cheetah thing back.
Yeah.
Every detail. That thing was freaking amazing. I love it.
You should put the Mecha Cheetah in the comic. What are you doing? You have control over this. You can do it.
Yeah.
They don't have to know where it's from.
All
right.
That may have worked it back in the day, but we're playing a new game now.
Playing with fire a little bit, huh? Anyway, we're done. We're done. That's it.
No, we're not, because before we go, we have to give a big thank you to all the patrons who make this show possible. Thank you so much to Daniel H., Eric F., Connell T., Alex P., Koopel and Crew 128, Frederick, Andrew D., ScruffyMatt, Saturn Flecky, Chris A., John B., Jennifer R., David C., Reverend the Light, Lisa M., Dois Disden, Dave M., Daniel B., Mike B., Samuel P., Salmon Cybercat, I am butchering these names, Digama F. Wow, Dragon Superfan, Brody M., Neil H., Justin G., David M.S., Adam T., Silly String, Takaro, Lee H.K., Chevelle, Don B., Sin Fritz, Taco El Gato Comics, John M., James K., Adam B.T., Overthinking Films, and Ron.
All right. Thanks, Ron, and everybody else. We appreciate you. We love you. Where can the people find you, Ian?
Head over to bumbleking.com. That has a link to everything that I'm working on, a release schedule, as far as I know as it goes, my con appearances, all that happy hoopla, or find me on Twitter at Ian Flynn BKC.
And don't forget, you can also find me on Twitter at KyleJCRB, or you can head on over to kngi.org, where you can find archived episodes of the BumbleKast and my other show, Nitro Game Injection, which is a video game music show that streams live on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. On that same site, so you head on over there and you can get all the info for that if you want to come tune in, hang out in the KNGI Discord if you would like, and all that other fun stuff.
Follow the show on Twitter at BumbleKast and contact us at bumblecast@yahoo.com.
And of course, you can also get some Bumble gear over at shop.spreadshirt.com/BumbleStore, where we sell all sorts of goodies that you can put on your own self, or you can put in your house. Make your own Bumble house out of Bumble store items. You can go full on Bumble. You can full on Bumble yourself out.
Build your own Bumble castle.
Yes, there we go.
And check us out on Sundays around 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for BumbleKast Gaming Live, which is now open to everybody, thanks to the wonderful generosity of our patrons.
Indeed. And also, don't forget to keep an eye out for other random streams that may or may not also be happening. I've been wanting to do them, but things have just been absolutely insane lately. So, sorry about that. We'll figure something out. But we are at least dedicated to doing the 10 p.m. Sundays as much as we can. So, keep an eye out for that.
That's going to wrap us up for the BumbleKast. We'll see you in 2 weeks for BumbleKast 95. The countdown to BumbleKast number 100 is happening now.
Oh boy, you should see the list of questions we have for number 100.
I think it's casting a shadow across the continent.
I think so. I think it's casting a shadow across the entire universe. It's pretty huge. Meow. Meow. You've been listening to the BumbleKast, a co-production of Bumble King Comics and the KNGI Network. Original theme music composed by Ken Coda Snyder. Remixed intro by T-Lopes. Find out more information, along with podcast feeder links, MP3 downloads, and more at bumbleking.com and kngi.org.
You remind me, that whole bit where she hooked up with Monkey Khan.
Oh, God. Did you write that?
Yeah, that was me.
That was you. Okay. I thought that happened earlier, too, though.
No, that was Iron Dominion. That was like middle of volume 1.
I could have swore there was like late something happened in the before issue 100 where they were playing with that too, but I don't know. Or maybe it's 120. I don't know. Somewhere around that point.
Iron Dominion is like perhaps my worst arc because nobody hates it. Nobody likes it. They just kind of forget it happened. Like, if it's a hated arc, at least it did something of note. If it's a beloved arc, then people are happy. Well, but when nobody remembers it, it's like, well, that was a waste of time. But that being said, I was just browsing around at random and came across somebody's fan character who was the daughter of Monkey Kong and Sally. Okay. That they liked the pairing so much, they made the child character of it. And it's like, wow, I feel vindicated.
That's not too surprising. That happens.
I out of that entire arc, there was like maybe a half a dozen people I saw who said, you know what? This pairing actually works for me. And it's like, all right, I sold the idea to just a few people. I feel accomplished. Time to move on.
I like the Iron Queen and Conquering Storm. Those are the two things that I remember from Iron Dominion.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't mind that arc. I think it's fine. I guess that's the thing. It's fine. I guess there's not really anything major about it, but like Conquering Storm is just so cool. So
here's the thing:
it's not a big loss
for that entire arc. When I was pitching stories for the year, I had 5 different springboards. I think one of them was the King Nagas arc. One of them was the Death Egg 2 launch. I forget what the other 2 were. But I put the Iron Dominion one in there as a joke, as something to be immediately rejected, so that if the editor said, I don't like any of these, or, I'm not digging this or that, I could say, well, you rejected one outright, man. I mean, throw me a bone. Except the editor came back and said, I like this one. I said, no, you don't. That's the joke one. It's like, no, it's the most interesting. No, it's not. Yeah, do this one. Oh, God, now I got to make this work.
That was the Iron Dominion?
Yeah, Iron Dominion was literally a throwaway plot line that got approved and turned into the next major event.
All right, well, heck. 200, yeah, that was issue 200 even, yeah, okay.
And I don't know, looking back on that arc, I feel like so much time was spent redeeming and rebuilding Khan's character that we didn't get a lot of plot progression.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Khan was the central protagonist of it, and he needed so much work that we kind of had to do what we did. I don't know, maybe it could have been a little more streamlined, but that story also suffered a bit from the structure of it had to be like this. So
that's funny.
I don't know.
Out of all of the characters, all the comic original characters, I find Monkey Kong to be like the least interesting and memorable. I don't really care for him too much on a personal
Nobody
level.
Did.
Okay.
Nobody
good.
did.
Okay, good. I wasn't the only one.
He was actively hated. Like every time a backup story appeared.
He wasn't he?
Were like,
yeah.
Why?
Oh, yeah.
And we did this, and by the end of it, people were like, he's okay. Like, well, he didn't become beloved, he just became tolerated.
I guess maybe that's just what happens when you put someone in someone's face so much. Put someone in your face so much, they just become like, all right, fine, whatever. They're here now. Okay. That's funny, though, because I also feel the same way about Jeffrey St. John. And I'm probably going to, I could probably incur the wrath of certain people if I mention that out loud. But Jeffrey St. John was kind of, I don't know. I never got into him as much as some other people did. Some people loved him, but
I always thought he was kind of a creep and a jerk, and that was before certain things came to light. It just
yeah, I never liked him
wasn't fond of him, tried to make him sympathetic, didn't get to do the payoff. Oh well.
Yeah, I never really liked him all that much. I'm trying to think of what other characters I didn't like. Or what other characters I was just kind of like middling on. I don't know.
I also remember with Khan's original appearance, like the whole setup was that Snively had all these like remote robots planned, and like he launched the egg robos, and I was so excited because I freaking adore the egg robos. And then the Egg Robos did nothing except get jobbed by Khan in a single panel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, ugh. Never mind that he got all, man grabby with Sally and had no personality outside of I am Goku just with less charm. It was, bleh.
Yeah. I've never been a big fan of King Acorn. I don't know.
No, he was a jerk.
Yeah, he's kind of a crap dude. Even when he wasn't like being like wasn't he being like mind controlled at some point? Or am I forgetting that? Am I thinking of something else? I don't know. I never got into.
Yeah.
I never really got into Sally's extended family.